Good evening and good morning. Live from Los Angeles, California, and Italy, Tuscany. It's around midnight here in Italy, and Alexander May is joining us from LA. Hello, Alexander. Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Excellent. Just came back from my dinner. And, I myself and a lot of people in Europe have been really concerned about what's been happening over in the beautiful state of California. So this is not just a pleasure talk about things. We are having a conversation with one of the most, I would say, pronounced and known healers in the California area in LA, Alexander May. So, once again, thank you so much for making this happen. Could you give us an update on what's going on there energetically?
So essentially what has been happening is a lot of people are very afraid and a lot of people are feeling a sense of dread, and are feeling unsafe. A lot of people's houses have burned down. A lot of people with the air quality is really bad. And a lot of people that are there are kind of like holding out as long as they can before they have to evacuate, essentially. Um, and there's also like a lot of propaganda online about the some of the fire chiefs there being unequipped to be able to handle the fires, which is now it's coming across as very homophobic. So there's like a lot of already like anti-LGBT propaganda happening. The infrastructure of it feels like there's a lot of the infrastructure of LA breaking down currently. That's what I'm perceiving too on an energetic level. Um, and I also perceive that a lot of change is going to occur. And I believe that the American people as a whole, not just the Californians, are starting to feel this push towards getting outside of their head and starting to connect more to community. I feel like they're feeling this push kind of towards that. And individualism is starting to disintegrate, if that makes any sense.
Hmm. Wow, this is a very deep observation. Alexander, how do you explain this very obscure lack of preparation, taking into consideration the fact that you guys pay the highest taxes in the US?
Yeah.
What can you
Um,
give us?
I did think that it was a little bizarre, Mary, that the farmers insurance pulled out their policies in the area where the fires happened. That is now common knowledge. It's not a conspiracy, it's very real. And that uh, raises many red flags.
One of one of the red flags is called the upcoming Neptune in Aries. You and I
Oh, what's
remember we had this conversation actually about a year ago.
mm,
Mm, um, it was one of our Insta lives where we mentioned that one of the collective planets, Neptune, will be changing signs and will enter the sign of Aries, which
mm,
basically will shift the whole narrative of what used to be defund the police and love the homeless people and we embrace everyone will shift more into the ideological warfare, into the kind of like regime based aggression and masculinity. And it's interesting that it starts with California. I personally perceive this, and this is a nervous laughter, right? It's not, I'm not laughing at the situation. I'm just really impressed by how literally we can receive and perceive astrology at times.
Yeah.
Mhm. Because as the fires started, I believe they started on the 7th of January. Am I right?
I
Some
don't know, but
like,
that's okay.
yeah, just a few days ago. And for astrologers, it's very important to know the start date, the date of the official announcement. And
Mhm,
I believe they started on the 7th. Um, and how literally the constellation up in the sky plays out down here on Earth in
mhm,
form of Pluto making an opposition to Mars and, starting a fire that is very Plutonian in its nature, which means it's
mhm,
widespread and
mhm.
it destroys a lot of homes as we speak. I personally know some people whose houses were completely destroyed. They don't have a place to live anymore. And yet, we could actually, as astrologers, we could see it coming. And I remember you and I were talking about the LGBT community back in the days and how these days are over, basically we said to each
Yeah.
other, right? So a lot of people will just go underground and try to be unseen and unnoticed because certain things will become popular, as far as masculinity and force and assertiveness. And some things will just cease to exist or will be less popular, such as
Mhm.
lesbian fire department chiefs. Right.
Yeah, I feel like I love how you said that. It's interesting because, this was already happening last year where people were pitting the trans community and so like a lot of people don't understand that LGBT does not exist without the T, right? And a
Mm.
lot of people were going into these conversations about transhumanism and things like that. But if you take away the noise, right? And take away what everyone is saying, you have to remember that I know I look really young and I look really good. I am a 40-year-old man and I did a lot of work with helping out at-risk LGBT youth from I think it was for like 10 years. I think I did that. And so there's a special place in my heart for people who are in my community. And so what I saw and I observed over the internet for the last 1 to 2 years was this people saying that trans people are not a part of the gay community. People kind of saying things like drag queens are just trying to, take advantage of little kids. And because people perpetuated that rumor, and most people have a cult like mentality of just following what other people are saying, everyone just started to believe it. Now, I wanted to ask you a question about that, Mary, because I felt a huge, and I mean huge shift in my life when, what was it, Pluto entered Aquarius? Is that correct?
Mhm.
Um, because you know more than I do about those types of things. Was that a big part of the mental shift? Was Pluto entering Aquarius as well? Because I felt like my insides got shifted. Like I feel like I became more aware.
Hmm. Well, we are getting into a very slimy and yet dangerous and very enticing topic here, Alexander, because a lot of people in the so-called spiritual community have very high hopes about this Aquarius age. just like there's a song from the 60s, This is the Age of Aquarius. I'm sorry, I can paint, but I
Oh,
cannot sing. But there's a very lovely song, This is the Age of Aquarius, by The Fifth Dimension was the name of the band.
oh, this is the dawning of the age of Aquarius, age of Aquarius. That one. Yeah.
Woohoo! It's fascinating, Alexander. I just cannot stop smiling. I know that all of the surrounding area around you is in flames, and you're somewhere with just the electricity. I guess you had a power outage, and now the electricity is back just for a few minutes, and here you are sitting and singing. This is fascinating. Um, so coming back to the spiritual community having high hopes in Aquarius. Oh, to me, looks like lack of knowledge,
Mhm,
ignorance. What is Aquarius? Aquarius is a fire sign. Oh, sorry, is an air sign. I keep thinking about the fire, so I said the fire sign. Is an air sign and is a very cold one. It's the last air sign in the zodiac. So
mhm,
now nowadays, if you want to open a bank account, you have to show your passport and you have to place your passport in front of your screen, in front of your video camera, in order to get approved, right?
mhm.
You have to go through a certain selection process that is done not by a human, but by an AI already, AI mechanism to go through certain processes to get approved to, keep moving and stuff. And this is Aquarius. Aquarius likes equality, but it also likes that some people are more equal than the others, if you know what
Interesting.
I mean.
I,
For this reference, we can refer to, for example, Mikhail Bulgakov, the Soviet writer from 1920s, who used to write under the table during the Stalin's era.
oh,
And he was only published in late 80s
mhm,
because his works were prohibited throughout the entire Soviet period.
see,
Um, some of the things that he wrote um, really explain this Aquarian nature. And this is called equality that is robotic, that is light, and at the same time lightweight in a negative way. So,
mm,
for example, you and I, you as Pisces, and me as Sagittarius, fiery Sagittarius, we will not be able to relate to the cold rationale that is behind Aquarius.
I see.
And obviously, what do we see now with Pluto in Aquarius in the critical degrees? It's just, I guess, at 0 degrees right now and
Mm,
some minutes. Making an opposition to Mars is being reflected right now as we speak. Being reflected in what's happening in California. And it's truly fascinating how we can predict certain trends knowing, truly knowing astrology. I find it fascinating. I mean, literally, like just 1 year ago, you and I were talking about how a lot of people who call themselves, who are in coaching business or
mhm,
trainers or speakers or whatever, how
mhm,
they're going to go down because they will not be able to respond timely and precisely and firmly, that they will not be able to react to situations that will start evolving and appearing in front of our eyes.
right.
And this is happening now.
It is, yeah. It's very interesting that you brought this up because something clicked in me when Pluto entered Aquarius, and I'm not sure if it was just because I've just been working on myself so much and just doing all this therapy work, and energy work, um, and working through my hypervigilance to be able to use it to my advantage as opposed to have it hinder me. Um, and what happened is I just became way more assertive and way more decisive and became more solution oriented. And now the way that I handle situations, I really understand myself more as a leader now, and what that means to me. It means community, and it means community building, and that's something that you and I have touched upon many times, and I would say it, but I really didn't understand what it really meant for me. And now I know. Like I energetically can perceive what that feels like and how it is required to be able to help people moving forward. And so I don't know if our audience knows or not, it doesn't matter. But Mary and I both predicted the pandemic before it happened. And Mary and I helped a lot of people during the pandemic because we were also going through the same thing, and that was community building, whether we were aware of it or not. And so, what we are doing currently is kind of like a full circle in a certain way. And I want to talk more about the Neptune and Aries situation. Sorry, is it, say it again? Neptune in Aries?
Exactly. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Aries. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. Not only that, also the lunar nodes.
Oh, can you tell us about that?
Exactly. You said it. You said community, and community in a way that, like, look, you have a house. The house is gone within a few hours.
Hmm.
What do? If you don't
Right,
have a community, you have
right,
no place to stay.
right.
You don't have a community, you have no one to comfort you.
Yeah.
If you don't have a community, or let's say, let's call it family, you are screwed more or less. So why
Mm-hmm.
is this happening? This is happening because starting off the 12th of January, starting with 12th of January, we have the complete change. Lunar nodes change the signs, and from the axis of Aries Libra, they move into the Pisces Virgo axis.
Oh,
So it
really?
sounds like abracadabra, but it basically uh, tests a lot of people on how attached are they to the material stuff.
Oh, really?
Stuff that you accumulate and you buy with all of these Black Fridays and Walmart and Target and Macy's and whatever. So if people have been accumulating a lot of shit and it's been piling up, they're not using it, they're not sharing it with anyone else, they put really a lot of value into their shoes and bags and whatever else, furniture pieces.
Hmm.
All of these things are going to be tested. And the test started with California. Well, how
Interesting.
interesting. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay. Can I ask you some questions around that?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, cool. So, I have been like perceiving and feeling that I've been wanting to do men's retreats for a really long time. And I have a really dear friend that's also a client. And he invited me up to go and basically create the blueprint for the men's retreat. And it was very interesting, Mary, because right before we did the session, all this stuff. We show up to the compound. There's no hot water. There's no nothing, right? And he looks at me and we both just start laughing because we're like, oh, we wanted to see the blueprint, right? And then as the day went on, we both realized that we weren't on our cell phone at all. And the more we both weren't on our cell phone, the more I felt connected to him as a person. And we did the session, and there was a lot of stuff that happened that I'm gonna keep private just out of respect to him. But you see that? But what happened was we both realized that the retreats need to be phoneless. So no cell phone, no Wi-Fi, none of that. And I just thought that it was kind of interesting that when I got back from being with him during that time, as soon as I came back home, the power went out, right? So instead of going, oh, this is so scary, oh, this is like so overwhelming, I thought, this is a part of your path. This is what you were doing with him, um, and then it was like all of the pieces started to fall together. One of my friends, who's also a client that wants to do men's retreats, called me out of the blue and was asking about, like, how did your experience go? You know, and I was like, oh, like, and it was interesting because his phone call was the only phone call that came through when the cell towers were down for the past 2 days, you know? So, what I wanted to ask you, Mary, is, are we heading into an age where we need to be more focused on community building without the emphasis and stress upon what is the words I'm looking for? The emphasis and stress and projections that your entire world is valued by what you have. Is that correct?
Hmm. I love the way you put things into a sentence. It's fascinating. To be completely blunt and honest with you, Alexander, I believe that we are heading straight on into the age of cutthroat mentality, assertiveness, and masculinity,
Mm,
unapologetic, unapologetic completely. And when you brought up the word cell phones, it reminded me of the fact that we have Uranus entering the sign of Gemini in July, I believe, in July
mm,
of 2025. What
mm,
happens, Alexander, when Uranus enters a specific sign? For example, a while ago, Uranus was in Taurus. Food prices skyrocketed.
mm,
Real estate went all the way up. Remember all of these people running
mhm.
from the state of New York trying to find a little shack somewhere in some shithole in Florida?
Yes.
Um, what else? Fake boobs and fake asses, fake teeth. All of this is Uranus in the sign of Taurus. Taurus is governed by Venus. So
Mm.
now Uranus will be moving into the sign of Gemini. What is your take on it? What's your prediction? I mean, you know astrology as well as I do.
I do. I actually, the audience doesn't know, but because I do sigil magic, I can perceive the astrological alignments, even if I don't know the exact terms. And it's funny because I'll call Mary or I'll voice note her and she'll be like, how did you know? And I'll be like, I can just feel it. I can perceive it. So I perceive that in June, July, people will really have to start to focus more on community building and away from being so overwhelmed by the internet and technology, because it's going to be subtle. It's not going to be this immediate, like, all the technology fails and like yada, yada, yada. It's going to be slower, you know? Um, and there's another thing I wanted to touch upon that I've been like
I agree.
channeling.
I agree. It will be slower. It will start to malfunction, and
Mm,
therefore it will become more and more exclusive and expensive.
yeah.
So, for example, if we were back in the days, if we were buying our laptops for 2 grand, 3 grand, now it's going to cost us a fortune. If we
Mm,
were buying our cell phones for, let's say, 600 bucks, 900 bucks. Now with Uranus and Gemini, that might just be 5 grand or even more.
Yeah.
All of the prices for vehicles, especially electric vehicles, will
Mm,
skyrocket. All of
mm,
the energy prices, and we're talking electricity, heating, all of the things that um, connect us to what you call community will become exclusive and expensive. I mean, look at what's happening right now in Russia. Russians can barely get on YouTube because it is more or less being hindered. Now, the Russian government is hindering its citizens from accessing YouTube for whatever reason. And we will start seeing it not only in Russia or China or in North Korea or somewhere else. It will be a widespread scene. And I bet there will be a moment when, in some countries, they will introduce, something like, oh, if you want to get online, you have to log in with your passport data. Why not?
mhm, mhm. Yeah. Um, so it's interesting that you bring that up because I had that awareness when we were talking about the men's retreats, in that uh, nanotechnology, cellular data, all of these things are starting to become an addiction for people, and people aren't even aware of it, that it's happening. Um, and so it's really important. Oh, you're gonna laugh at this, Mary. I've been studying my chart more, and so Taurus is in my second house. So that's all about taking your time and really working on creating a strong foundation to be able to create generational wealth. And so I'm setting up a lot of systems currently. So not only can I live comfortably, but so that I can help other people as well. Because I am kind of like an anomaly in this world. I'm a pop singer and I'm a DJ and I'm a healer. And I I know and I feel that all of those things will mix together to help people. And I want to be able to give that to people, but in a way where it's sustaining me. And I think that the more I become aware that I need to take my time and to build this strong foundation, not only in my career, but as a leader to help other people, it's really helping. Now, I wanted to touch upon something else with you that I have actually.
Let me just comment on what you said.
Sure.
You used
Sure,
the
sure.
magic words, Alexander. You said
Yeah.
leadership, and at the same time, a lot of people have been struggling with this overwhelming creativity and inability of this world to perceive and receive their creativity.
Right.
Now, also in 2025, we
Mm.
are having Neptune and Jupiter conjunction.
Ooh,
And
really?
Neptune and Jupiter
Wow.
together, it sets a whole new social trend and cultural trend. Beautiful.
I
This is
love
Jupiter
Jupiter.
sign, if you guys don't know what this is. Um, so leadership, arts, also, we're talking paintings, we're talking music, we're talking about new forms of spirituality and art, and it's going to be in fashion to be spiritual, by the way. All of these things come together, and we should definitely watch for trends that start to evolve in April of 2025,
Mhm,
because these will be the seeds that will later, a decade later, will start growing and flourishing, and we will harvest the fruit of it later
mhm,
down the road.
mhm.
Sorry, I interrupted you. You go ahead with your question.
No, no, I really enjoyed hearing what you just said. So what I realized for this year for me and the upcoming months is that I just have to stay the course with doing what I have been doing for the last couple of years. But again, there is an energetic shift that happened within me that has made me stronger. And part of that, right? Part of that is I learned over the last couple of months how to handle my hypervigilance. And for those that don't know, hypervigilance is a form of complex PTSD. And the easiest way to explain it is I'm always 3 steps ahead, not only of myself, but of everyone else. And I've been working with an incredible psychotherapist. Her name is Sally Terrell, and she's also a medium. And so it was really great to work with her, but also with other people like Mary and I work with each other as well. And so I started combining everything together. The one missing component in my daily practice was being able to get out of my head and to put myself in my body because I'm very cerebral. Um, and also understanding that I was misdiagnosed for a long time as schizoaffective. I'm actually ADHD, which is autistic ADHD. Yeah. Um, Using techniques like checking in with the body, remembering to breathe, looking this way, breathing slowly, and then looking this way to orient the body so that I don't burn out my circuits. So to explain to the audience what that means is yes, I am amazing as at what I do as a healer, psychic medium, and an exorcist, but what happens is I have a nervous system, right? So even if I am able to handle channeling all of this energy, I need to check in with my body and go, hey, body, where are you at? One being really calm and 10 being overwhelmed. You're at a 7 right now. So what the audience can do is kind of like check in and say, okay, I'm at a 7. Then you're going to take your fingers over your third eye and you're going to twist it like a clock and go, let's go from a 7 to 4. How does that feel? Right? Good. Maybe we'll take it like one more. So, 3. How does that feel? Breathe. Maybe take that to a 1. Oh, oh, I'm having an interview with Mary. We're having a conversation. I'm no longer perceiving everybody else's stuff, right? And so then I can be able to be a better leader and also have more fun in my life because I'm not blowing out my nervous system perceiving entities and dimensions and everybody else's bullshit, essentially. So
Mm-hmm.
I think for people who are like you and I, who are actual leaders in our own way, we have to really take care of this moving forward.
Mm. I'm sure a lot of people have heard you right now and checked it, marked this wonderful idea. But I will ask you again, Alexander,
Mhm,
now that you are in LA, surrounded with people who are grieving over their stuff,
mhm,
the stuff that they have been saving for. Some people, working as slaves for
mhm,
corporate America, putting stuff on their credit cards and paying it off, paying mortgage. Now it's just rubble, ashes, dust.
mhm.
Now that you're surrounded with this energy of grief and regret, what would you recommend for people in California and around the world who resonate with this energy a lot? What would you recommend? How can they snap out of it? Is there a way?
Yeah, there's a very fast way to do it. So, one of the fastest ways to put yourself back into your body, there's a couple of things, and I'll just go ahead and show you. So, Mary, you're going to put your hand on your forehead. And now you're going to imagine that you're breathing into your hand, right? So you're essentially breathing from up top, and then you're going to breathe into your hand, okay? So take a deep breath. And then when you take your hand off your forehead, you're going to imagine you're dropping into your body. Yeah. There you go. See? Look at that. See how you yawned? So like, right. So somatically, so what you guys just saw, everybody, is a somatic release. So usually that's like yawning or twitching, things like that, right? So that's a really fast way of doing it. Another really fast way, and everyone should test it because everyone's body is different. Sometimes it might be too much, sometimes it's too little. You need to check in with yourself and make sure that you breathe before you do each thing, because the breath is what connects you to the body, and breath is free. You have tons of it. So one way is to do physical touch, so going like this. Right? So you're just gonna keep breathing into it. Yeah. Now stop. Now check in with your body, Mary. If your body was at a 1 and a 10 on a stress level, where would your number be currently?
3.
A 3. Okay, great. So it definitely went down. Okay.
It's only 3 because I thought about what's his name, Ben Affleck, I think. I saw a lot of pictures of him being startled by the sight of his burning house. And I thought just a second ago, how bad that Alexander was not around showing this exercise.
But to Ben Affleck, like going like,
Would have
okay,
been much better off, this poor guy.
um, you're so
So if
funny.
I don't think about Ben Affleck, then it's 2. It's a 2.
Um, the other thing is actually this was a meridian point for tapping. Another thing is called EFT. Uh, so that's like a whole other thing that we can go into another time. But just getting in touch with the body. Another way too, sorry for the noise, is so when you're sitting down, tapping on your knees and inhaling and exhaling. And then like, yeah, like almost like you're pedaling your feet, right?
Why
Now,
knees, Alexander? Why knees? How do you explain that?
so nobody ever touches their knees. Everyone's always going like, my neck, my back, like all of these other things. And so you never think about touching your knees. You never think about touching your joints, right? Everyone's always like thinking about, oh, my head, my neck, my back. What about your joints? Are you touching your joints? Are you guys feeling your muscles? Like, are you connected in your body? Where's your body? Where is it? Like, where are you centered in your body? And doing these things every day has helped me so much because I didn't realize how stuck in my head I was, you know? And your body has all these wonderful awarenesses that it can give to you if you just listen to it. But because we've become so orientated here, we don't get orientated here. Another way of doing this is through the technique that I've developed for the past 10 years called DVM, which is called Dragon Vein Meditation. So essentially, what DVM is DVM is a multifaceted technique that balances the masculine feminine energies of the body. So each chakra system is on an endocrine system that regulates hormones in the body. So when we get stressed out, everything just dysregulates. The nervous system, the immune system, everything just goes, you know? So when you do DBM, it sends all of the emotions that you consider or perceive bad or good as vital life force to actually heal the planet. So not only are you healing yourself, but you're also healing the planet as well. Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Healing the planet. Yeah. Now, the word global warming, this expression, and
Sure.
everything that has to do with the planet is having a different vibe to it, is having a different taste starting from the 10th of January 2025. And we know why, right? We know that it has a lot to do with the upcoming Neptune and Aries, with the lunar nodes changing signs in just a few hours, and something that we talked about earlier. Um, all of the major collective planets basically going into Aries. So
Mm.
I can imagine that the fire, if we go back to the topic, um, the topic that concerns a lot of people right now, the fire started probably with, let's say, is it true or is it not true? With homeless people, or maybe smoking joints, or just living outside somewhere and not necessarily purposefully, but starting a fire here and there, and because of the planetary, let's say, constellations, the kind of fire that went uncontrollably strong. This is basically the narrative that's been out there for the last few hours. It's just that
Hmm.
homeless people started a fire because everyone in California is way too tolerant to homeless people. Now we have weed dispensaries, whatever, weed stores, shops. The mayor of Los Angeles, instead of being on site, went to Africa, and I watched some of the clips of the show where she lets other people speak and just stands aside and smiles.
Hmm.
What a fucking show. My God. What a
Hmm.
disgusting scene. What's your take on that, Alexander?
Okay, so I have a couple of things to say. Um, we must understand and realize that there is only so much that we can do for other people. But if we have the capacity, if we have the wherewithal to help those people, we should be helping people who are suffering. And I think that it's really starting to sell to people this very elitist mentality, and is almost selling a mentality to people that we should essentially look at these people as if they are dogs, and that's not okay. It is not okay. And um, I
But
have
this
a
is
lot.
starting right now.
It
I mean,
is happening. Yeah,
it
it's
is
it's.
happening. It started just a few days ago. I mean, astrologically, we have seen it
Mhm,
coming. It
mhm,
started, and there is no point of the return at this point.
mhm,
Um, there is
mhm.
no way back.
Do
Although, yet a lot of people are being put at test with the lunar nodes,
Yes.
because the North Node in Pisces
Mhm.
speaks volumes about, being compassionate, not being attached to material things, just like the Virgo South
Yeah.
Node, and being spiritual in the best possible way.
How can we move forward and be able to be metaphysically aligned, but also grounded in our humanity in a way where we aren't disassociated all the time? And how can we come together as a community that is able to have compassion and to be able to be resilient as well as not getting burnt out at the same time. And a
Very
lot.
good and very rhetorical question at this point, I'm guessing. Because compassion is something that will have very little room in the upcoming, let's say,
Mhm,
2025.
mhm.
It's almost like the synonym of weakness. Compassion is a synonym of weakness. This is going to be the motto of 2025. Um, I guess we can start with forming our surrounding, shaping our surrounding in a way that we have our own community. And this is
Yep.
just inevitable. Each and every region, country, place will have its own community based on the values that are practiced there.
That's true.
Absolutely.
Um, I also perceive and sense and know that um, it will unfortunately become a skill moving forward, that a lot of people will and have been losing a lot of their natural compassion and empathy over the last couple of years as well. Um, and this is very much due to the fact that we are disassociated constantly. So part of the reason why it's really important to emphasize to people getting in the body and being in the body, these outside influences that people consider to be what makes them happy are not what makes them happy. Um, and if they do, they have a shelf life, you know? And so we really need to get back to the things that make us feel joy and that make us enjoy talking. Like, for example, for our audience, Mary and I clearly do not want to do this unless we're being stimulated, right? And so if we're not doing this from a place of fun and interesting dynamic and stimulating each other, how the fuck can we do this? Do you see what I mean? So um I want to make things as fun as possible, even in the darkest of times, because I want to bring light and I want to bring joy to this world that is becoming so apathetic to everything. And it's fine. I'll maneuver my way through it with the best face I can moving forward, but I will not become overwhelmed or become controlled in any way, shape, or form. And I will not adhere to that ever.
Amazing. Should we look at some of their research? I mean, research is the big word. Just, I found I found the natal chart of the governor of California a few minutes ago online and just wanted to share it with you. So, Gavin Newsom,
Mm-hmm.
born in October 1967, 5:13 a.m., San Francisco, California. Um, can you see the screen well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm looking.
Um, so just, you talked about fun, so let's just have some fun and I'm gonna tell you what's been currently happening. So this is the karmic task of Mr. Newsom, born in 1967. You
Wow.
see, his lunar node, the north node, is in the sign of Aries. Well, well, well. If we turn on the transits, we will see that the north node currently is exiting the sign of Aries and is entering the sign of Pisces. So basically, every time we have the so-called lunar node return, we
Mm-hmm.
are being tested. And governor was tested. Probably one of the tests was the bill that he did not sign, that he didn't let through, that protected some kind of little fish. And we're talking about here the sign of Libra, trying to be nice to everyone, not really taking stands, not really taking sides, mm,
Mm-hmm.
just, being way too diplomatic. and peaceful and keeping the things as they are. So he followed his south lunar node, which he shouldn't have done. He should have went and he should have said, hey, everything that has to do with fire, everything that has to do with water, everything that has to do with us fighting emergency, we should be prepared for. He didn't do it. So now, as his lunar node return is over, he is basically harvesting the results of his actions. And interestingly enough, if we look at his chart, I just see it right now. We see some of the planets here, major planets, showing that either people under his command will go through the age of, how would I put it? Being influenced by the planet Uranus. So that means electric cars, new ways of energy, new ways of communication, if you will, something that is widespread. And at the same time, can the citizens under his command can be exposed to potentially dangerous and devastating situations. Now, let me remind you, Alexander, that every ruler, when he or she steps into power, his or her natal chart influences the whole population of the country that they govern. In our particular case, because it's the United States of America, when the governor steps into power, his or her natal chart influences the entire state and basically dictates how the things are going to go and what things are, going to look like down the road. So here we are looking at his chart, which clearly tells us that the fires started as a result of Gavin Newsom not passing his karmic test. Now let's turn on another map here. This is the start of the fires. I looked at the announcement. The fires mostly started on the 7th of January. And you're just going to be surprised right now. So the inner circle is Newsom's natal chart, right? And the outer circle, I hope you can see it on your phone. But the outer circle is the official announcement of the fires. This is the time and the date. Now, what we need to pay attention to is right here in the right upper corner right here. You see, fascinating stuff. Here are the transits, right? Or here's the official announcement date. Here's the governor. Now, the ascendant, we'll look at the similar numbers. And what do we see? We'll look at the critical degrees. In Newsom's chart, we have the karmic task, the north node, 28 degrees of Aries. And at the time when the fire started, the ascendant of this fire was 28 degrees and 15 minutes of Taurus. This is for a reason. This happened for a reason. Now, everything around 28, 28, 29, this is an exact conjunction. Imagine, you're a musician, you probably know. If one instrument resonates, if one instrument, let's say, vibrates with one tone, another one can vibrate harmoniously, right? So in this particular case, we see that the transient, what's this?
So this is the order of flats and the clefs for both key signatures, but it's a music wheel. I never realized that it actually looks like the astrology chart.
Mm.
Yes, I understand.
Fascinating. And look at this. Currently, we have Mars in retrograde. You
Mm,
probably sensed it, you felt it. Now, Mars is in the sign of Cancer.
okay.
What is Cancer for you? What is Cancer as a sign?
Water?
Water, and also it symbolizes home. This is our home. This is where we live. This is
Mm,
our mother.
mm-hmm.
So, the current degree and minute of Mars resonates with Governor Newsom's chart immensely.
Mm,
Look at Mercury, look at Moon, Mercury. Everything resonates at the same, everything is at the same vibration. The reason why he is getting hit hard right now and his image is being actually smeared, with all kinds of accusations, and rightfully so, uh,
mm,
is because the karmic task that he had, that he should have done, and he should have prepared the water supply and things like that.
mm,
He hasn't done. And the only reason why we found out about it is because the planets moved in a way that it's being shown, if I may say. One,
oh,
again, very interesting moment here that I just realized. You know, when Mars went retrograde this year,
mm,
it
mm-hmm.
went retrograde in the sign of Leo.
Mm,
So we're talking about the big shots in Hollywood, the
mm-hmm.
houses of really big stars. And I'm not a celebrity lover. I don't remember when was the last time I watched TV. I guess in 2006. I don't have
Mm-hmm.
a TV. In all
Mm-hmm.
of the apartments where I lived that I bought or rented, I never had a TV.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mars in Leo uh started retrograde, and then it went into the sign of Cancer. So the aggressive energy that started in the infamous houses of Hollywood celebrities transferred into the widespread fire that destroyed homes and houses.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about suppressed aggressive energy that manifested as fire. Do you
It's
understand what I mean? Mm-hmm.
I do actually. So, so there was essentially what you're saying is all of the because certain things were not dealt with and were not addressed, either consciously or subconsciously on purpose. This also enacted a chain of karmic events as well. Um, that's very with this. Wow, you did that with the astrology. That's so interesting. I've actually never seen you do that before. That was really cool.
Oh,
Really
I did it
cool.
simultaneously right in front of you. Um,
Wow.
we just need to know always the exact time and place of birth of, let's say, governors or
Hmm.
presidents, if we live in this or the other country. And
So,
um,
so just to, because I'm learning with you as well, and with the audience, when a leader comes into power, their astrological natal chart is essentially activated, and so they're basically given the choice whether they want to deal with the karma, is that correct, of their chart or no?
their chart is being projected onto the citizens of this particular country,
Oh, got it, got it.
and they play out his or her projection of the.
Whoa. Okay. So the whole country plays out the projection of that leader.
Absolutely, the whole country.
Wow. Oh, that's so interesting.
And you know what's interesting too?
Uh,
When we look at Trump's chart, he
yeah.
is here. to destroy things as they were.
Mm-hmm.
He's a complete revolutionary.
Mm-hmm.
Some people can call him a showman, salesperson, whatever. No, he is here to destroy things,
Mm.
to change them for good. So when you asked me at the very beginning, Mary, what do you think about Pluto and Aquarius? Trump is the representation of Pluto in Aquarius.
Mm.
Ladies and
Mm-hmm.
gentlemen.
You know, it's interesting that you brought that up because when the whole build a wall situation was happening and the American people were just like, woo, you know, um, there was already such a sub undercurrent of racism and homophobia that was building up to the surface, that people were constantly being told that they couldn't feel that way and that they couldn't say those things because it wasn't acceptable or PC. And I believe that Trump served as like a catalyst for that because the wow, now that you said that, it's making, wow, that makes a lot of sense. And so the American people were sort of acting out the projections of the chart during that time and are continuing to. Wow, that,
Alexander, absolutely, absolutely. Look
uh,
who he wants to get into office. Now
right.
we have JD Vance. I'm pretty sure, and now we're getting into a whole new topic, but
Hmm.
we'll do another
Yeah.
Insta life, whatever, YouTube life about this. We should actually look at the natal chart of JD Vance because
Mm.
I'm afraid that he might be our next president. And you
Interesting.
know under what circumstances this happens.
Sure, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the
Um,
thing. He brought a lot of military people. There is one dude that every single middle-aged woman in America is dreaming of. I forgot his name. He's got a very complicated last name, a lot of tattoos, and six children, five children, four
I,
children. Um, I guess it doesn't sound good, but his last name is like Hogwarts. Hogwarts. In any
uh-huh.
case, a very handsome gentleman, the kind of narcissist that every hysterical woman falls for, goes for.
The
Um,
bad way, is that what you're saying?
mhm. And some other folks who are very masculine, very
Hmm.
military. They have military background.
Hmm.
This is Neptune in Aries.
Oh, I see.
Mhm.
Got it. Hmm.
Yes.
Wow, this has been very interesting for me because we've had conversations about astrology before, but I feel like we're going way more in depth, which is really great. But it's also very stimulating for me too. Which actually, uh, new thing. Now I'm realizing that it probably would be helpful in some way, shape, or form to create a series of clearings around clearing the projections of how the natal chart affects other people and world leaders as well. It would be very interesting to see what would occur um, in my own personal journey and perhaps with others as well, now that you've said that to me. Because as you know, Mary, I love doing past life clearing and karmic clearing. So it would be interesting to see how that affects things. Yeah.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Alexander, I have another question for you.
Sure.
Uh, all of these people who've lost their houses,
Hmm.
what do you think happened to them now? Where are they?
Well, there are the actual citizens that are devastated. So we send them lots of love and compassion. But there were a couple of people that posted on Instagram that were like uh high level celebrities, things like that, saying like we're just regular people, our homes burned down. That was kind of weird. Like nobody said that you weren't a person. So that was kind of like bizarre to observe and like a little delusional, I think. Um, uh,
Mm-hmm.
um, I
And
think
yes, sorry, go ahead.
no, I just think a lot of the regular, the regular, sorry, a lot of the yeah, uh, sort of like regular, normal normal citizens of the of California, of LA, and everything, they're just trying to make sure that they can hold out for as long as they can and not leave. And then, of course, for the citizens whose houses have burned down, it's been pretty like devastating because that's their whole world, right? So it's just been interesting to observe it. Yeah.
Mm. Mars in Cancer in general is considered to be in a very weak position in astrology.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people that I have met, especially men who have Mars in Cancer, are very prone to manipulation, some kind of deception,
Mm-hmm.
mm, illusion, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and inner hidden and suppressed aggression
Mm-hmm.
is Mars in Cancer. And it's fascinating that in California it played out in form of houses being destroyed in a Martian way by Mars, by fire.
Oh, it is interesting. I just realized, I just kind of started to connect the dots that you said Cancer was the home, right? And you said that what did you say, the natal chart projected out, the citizens feel it. So if it's the governor of California, right? Sorry, the mayor of LA, then that affects everyone. What do you think is going to happen to him?
Oh, the governor of California is done.
Mm,
Mm,
hmm.
I
Yeah.
mean, his image is irreparable, and the damage that was done by or through or by him not passing the test, the karmic test is, basically brings him to the point where he will be remembered in history as the kind of governor who failed to provide the citizens of LA and the neighboring areas with enough water to put the fire down.
I see.
Mm.
What do you think is going to happen to the citizens of LA and the rest of California? What do you think is going to
Well,
happen?
look, we have I'm not sure if our readers and viewers have realized this by now. We have a whole new situation evolving right here and now, a completely new situation. Once again, I'll repeat myself. We have major collective planets entering completely different signs, different from what we have known for the past 30, 40, 60, 70 years. These major planets haven't been in these signs for a long, long time, since the Second World War, more or less. And also, the change of the lunar nodes is quite dramatic. Lunar nodes you can compare to a compass
Mm,
that shows you the direction. Where
mm,
should I go? Where should we go right now? We
mm,
go towards this Piscean energy of spirituality and growth and compassion and selflessness.
mm,
Some people can compare it or can draw parallels to Stoicism. You should become a Stoic. That means if you're used to sleeping, on a nice mattress, king size bed, whatever, fresh linen. Get yourself a sleeping bag and sleep somewhere out there in the woods for a few days.
Mm,
Stoicism. Stop getting attached to material things because things will change.
mhm,
And we also have Uranus exiting Taurus, which means that we will have the collapse of the financial system in 2025 as we know it. I
yep.
see that you resonate with me on this.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen?
I've been feeling it. I mean, it's going to happen slowly and subtly, but it will happen, and it's begun to start happening. I think that's also why I'm transitioning into, like, I'll still continue to see clients and everything, but um, learning how to move generational wealth and passive income into community as opposed to just keeping it for myself. I definitely perceive that this year I'll become way more successful, and will definitely like treat myself for sure. But then eventually I'll need to be like, well, where is all this money gonna go? You know? And it will need to go into community building. And when the financial collapse happens and money will no longer, well, the thing is that money will still get used, but it won't be the way that it was before, you know? Um,
Absolutely. Absolutely, I agree. And speaking of this infamous Pluto in Aquarius that everyone is fascinated with, well, check this out. Pluto in Aquarius in some of the Chinese provinces, now what they test is they give people a little bit of electronic money,
mm,
but you can only buy food or necessities with it, and your money expire by the end of the day. You cannot
oh,
trade, you cannot buy other goods, otherwise, the kind of goods that are not approved by the Chinese government. Pluto in Aquarius. Now, also, Aquarius is ruled by Uranus. So we're talking crypto and uh, who is not in this new asset class that is emerging in front of our eyes is probably going to lose a lot of opportunities.
mm,
So Bitcoin, XRP, Ethereum, you name it. If you're not in it, you lose a lot because we see an emergence of a completely new, let's say, value system, and it will start taking its shape in 2025 for sure.
mm. I would highly suggest, if people have never been interested in crypto, to perhaps get back into it just a little bit to get curious about it. And there's also a lot of people that are aligning themselves with people that have a lot of money in crypto, either consciously or subconsciously, because they know that that perhaps is going to be what the new decentralized currency is that cannot be controlled, perhaps. Um, but it's still being, the funny thing about this though, Mary, is that it is being controlled in a certain way. And as you and I both know, there are entity attachments that are connected through these currencies, because currency has an energy and has a flow connected to it. Um, and I have perceived and seen over the last couple of years a lot of these young men that come into millions of billions of dollars in their early 20s losing their minds because they are not prepared for the influx of energy that comes through their body when they come into all of this money. However, I have met
Well, if
some.
they want to reduce the influx of energy coming into their body, they should get themselves a Chinese girlfriend. But usually, people of a European descent, once they marry Asian folks, their energy level goes down. They get older, they get gray hair, poor health, and lack of ambition. This is what happens. So, if you're bombarded with a lot of energy from all of the sides, then just get yourself someone from China. I know it sounds racist, but a lot of research has its say.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Um, it is very sort of fascinating that and maybe this might be going off topic, but it is very fascinating how so many older or younger rich men or men that come into power never really end up dating people their own age and always end up going for girls who are 18, 19 years old or look almost pre-pubescent, which is very fascinating. Um,
Hmm.
um,
It has its own explanation. I personally don't find it offensive if someone is drawn to a person who looks young.
hmm,
I mean, you and I, we look young, we're young. Uh,
sure.
but a lot of narcissists usually are drawn to people, let's say, with a certain s- supply of collagen. Um, uh, don't laugh. uh, because they're very much afraid of aging.
Oh, I see. So
Welting, there's a special term in psychology, welting narcissist.
welting.
Welting, like a flower.
Oh, wilting. Oh, right.
Yes, like your
They're like,
stamina and your physical form, when it goes down, you want to substitute it with something that is young to remind yourself that you're still kind of a little bit good.
is that like another version of vampirism?
Uh, it is the point where a parasite turns into a victim himself.
Whoa, interesting.
Hmm. Because
Uh,
the only women who agree to be, if we talk about women who agree to be with welting narcissists, are gold diggers.
so so I wanted to I knew you were going to say that. So what I've been talking about with a lot of my close group of friends um is that the culture in LA and the rest of the world with like sugar daddies, escorting, sex work, things like that is that a lot of these women and men and non-binary people, trans people that get into sex work, they can make a lot of money and they can create a lot of money, but what they're not educated on is where they should be putting their finances. And so they kind of get stuck in this sort of like loop of what's the next sugar daddy? What do I need to get augmented? Like, what instead of just enjoying what they are receiving. And so it's interesting how you brought up kind of like the parasitic sort of relationship, um, where it can veer into very dark territory sometimes because if they're just functioning from their trauma response and doing sex work from their trauma or receiving this energy from these sugar daddies from trauma as opposed to just receiving it from joy and a place of receiving, it can become destructive to both parties involved, even if the narcissist becomes the victim. I can definitely see from both sides. And I brought this conversation up with you because uh a lot of my close girlfriends in LA that either ended up dead or went deep into drug addiction, a lot of it was because they were thrusted either consciously or subconsciously into this like world of these like older rich men, um and not being empowered or educated that they could do their own thing independently without them. And it is very much like a culture. And um, what are your thoughts on that?
We will separate our lengthy and very deep interview into, I guess, two or three parts,
Okay.
because with our new age society, people are just not capable of keeping attention for 2 hours,
Okay.
you
That's
know.
okay.
But so this is part two. Part two starts right now. And to answer your question, Alexander, what can I say? I can only say one thing. In classical psychology,
Mm,
there is a code. There is a very strict code
mm,
for psychologists and psychoanalysts that states, do not take prostitutes, people who engage in promiscuous behavior, into therapy. Period.
interesting.
Mm-hmm. And also, oh, they're very strict. And if we're talking about like old school code, they also do not take people over 70 or even 60.
Really
Mm-hmm. Yes, because they think that their neural connections in the brain are so stiff and rigid that they are very incapable of changing their behavior.
interesting. So,
Mm-hmm.
what do you do when you meet exceptions to the rule? What does that mean then?
Well, exceptions to the rule do exist, but I personally do not take into therapy
Mm-hmm.
people with the record of, let's say, erratic sexual encounters. You know,
Mm,
not only because it's written in the book, uh, not because, I had to pass the test to have this diploma, not because of certain rules and regulations, but also due to the fact that these folks had so much trauma,
mm,
so much trauma that it would be very difficult for one psychotherapist to bear it all, to pull
mm,
them out, to bear the burden of their sexual, emotional, physical, you name it, trauma.
mm. I have an interesting question for you because I
If
really
you want to take these kind of clients into, and work with them, you should charge them not double but triple the price.
oh I
Should
do.
be very expensive because
Well, I
this
do.
is a difficult and hard work.
Mm. I've found that my close friends that have done sex work or even colleagues that are healers that have done sex work, they always end up paying me more just because of the equalization of energy as well. And I've only worked with, I would say, 2 out of 10 of those people really actually applied it and were able to move through it. But I also think that that's because it really takes a strong will to be able to want to let go of, wow, this is like really uncomfortable to talk about. Um, it takes a very strong will to acknowledge and to recognize that the fuel that perhaps has been propelling you forward might not be as empowering as you think it is. Kind of like how I was describing earlier, like when people function from their trauma sexually as opposed to just functioning from what turns them on from a very authentic place, those are two very different things. And I don't think that we have those conversations with people often. And in fact, I don't think I've had this conversation with anyone ever, really. So it's kind of cool to be able to have this rapport with you and to hear your truth about it and to also to hear mine and to talk about it because I don't think it's spoken of, actually. I think it's a very taboo subject, actually.
You nailed it. You nailed it. A lot of people get turned on by their trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Mm, one of the examples, let me give you an example. I remember this conversation with an intellectual in New York City. I guess it was Midtown or Upper East Side. We were playing chess.
Hmm.
The guy was of a Russian descent, and somehow through mutual friendship connection, we came together and we had this conversation. And I could tell that he is a womanizer and let's say has a serious history of promiscuous behavior, right? So at some point, because I was very kind to him, we were talking literature and I love Latin American literature and we were talking about that. And at some point, I looked at him as if it would have been his mother.
Oh, whoa.
He was excited.
Yeah.
I could tell that he was sexually excited, that he was energetically excited, emotionally excited. This
Mm-hmm.
was weird.
Mm-hmm.
And just to tell you one more detail about this encounter, we're talking about an Orthodox Jew who decided to stop being the Orthodox Jew. Yes.
Whoa.
So we're talking about incest. And incest usually in the child's mind creates such a turmoil of feelings and affects that the little being, the child, is not capable of putting together and comprehending and sorting through. And then it creates either a neurosis or psychosis or,
Mm-hmm.
some kind of condition that follows this or that individual throughout their life.
Mm, that's really interesting.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for sharing that story with myself and the audience too. Um, it's interesting that you brought that up because I think a lot of people don't really recognize or realize that a lot of them are acting out their mommy and daddy issues with their relationships with people, friends, business partners. I think uh, just everyone in general. I think a lot of people don't go back to the basics of that, where we go, am I acting out my relationship with this person because I see them as my mother or my father, my brother, my sister? Like, we don't ask those questions. And I think for myself personally, uh, because I was so, I'll say it, it's fine. Because I was so torn internally for so long, wrestling with my masculine and my feminine, a lot of it came from my sort of distorted cognitive distortion around my relationship with my mother. And as I started to finally work on myself and really go to therapy and work with the psychotherapist and actually like start to unravel all of that, I started to realize that it all starts with me and it ends with me. And regardless of whether a certain individual in my family did something that either they consciously or subconsciously did to hurt me, it is my choice whether I want to hold on to it or not, right? And so I just got to the point of where I was like, I'm a 40-year-old man. Like, I need to really just allow myself to enjoy my life, and I don't need to continue to suffer, which is my own suffering. Like, only you can release yourself from that. And it's very difficult and it's very hard, but it's worth it, you know? Because, I mean, how can I be with a man or have a husband if I don't love myself? Like I can't, I'm not, I'm just gonna be constantly energetically leaking to all of these traumas and triggers. You know what I mean? So it's just been a very interesting process for me personally, to let that go, is what I'm trying to say.
There's a very fine book and also a film made in the Soviet Union, the story and the adventures of Munchausen.
Ooh.
Munchausen, I guess he was Austrian.
Mm.
At some point in this book and in the movie, he pulls himself up out of a swamp by pulling his hair up.
Oh.
So this is virtually, basically, this is what you have described right now, Alexander. You pulled yourself out of a swamp by your own hair. And with everything that we have discussed today, I guess our viewers will be left with a pleasant feeling of certainty that
Yeah.
they are, going towards spirituality, working on their attachment to physical material things,
Mm.
letting them go,
Mm.
and exercising their own stoicism the best they can, and also trying to pull themselves out of the swamp of the lies and confusion that we have had over the past decade. I think all of these components were brought by you, Alexander, and Mary also included today, to inspire our audience. And I'm looking forward to us speaking again soon.
Me too. I was I was really excited for this today, Mary, because there are just so many kind of I can't deny the synchronicities of the events that have happened to me that have kind of called me back into the space again, um to be a leader. So we'll be able to do this uh, in a way that's very different now. So it's going to be fun to do that with you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, leadership. Leadership is the new sexy. Leadership is the new black. Not Gucci bags, not shit that you have been piling up in your basement,
Mm.
but leadership. Welcome to the new age. I guess we should put some music. This is the age of Aquarius.
This is the dawning of the age of it. And I like play with my nipples. Just kidding.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, have a great evening, and we see you soon.
Bye.